Well, welcome to another episode of Views from the Bridge, your second favorite podcast about probably your favorite team at this point. They actually finally won a game tonight after giving up the lead against Miami on Saturday, but that's okay. They do that to a lot of teams. But the Philadelphia Union, I'm here tonight with a special preview episode for our matchup this weekend against FC Dallas. Buzz is here from Third Degree Podcast, and Buzz, thanks for jumping in and joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. So I love giving, Union fans, if you're anything like, I always say this, if you're anything like me, you watch the Union and you don't watch a whole lot of other, and with MLS's like stacked scheduling, sometimes games can just get away from you and you hardly ever see any other games or any other teams. And so I like to give people kind of an update of what's happening with the team that is playing the Union on the weekend. And so tell us a little bit about FC Dallas's season so far, kind of what's transpired over the first 13, 14 games, whatever it's been.
Sure. Well, FC Dallas is a team obviously on the outside of the playoffs trying to get in. They're a team in search of an identity. They are atrocious at home and somewhat decent on the road. They set a franchise record 6 road games without a loss to start the season. I think they still have the second best road record in MLS, and their home record is abysmal. So we are all scratching our heads trying to figure out what is going on with this team. They don't have a really good idea about what tactic works best for them. They're still trying to absorb the addition of Lucho Costa and try and figure out how to use him, since he doesn't particularly fit the formation the coach would like to play. They having to use another formation half the time that the coach doesn't want to use, but yet it seems to be getting better results. So there's a real dichotomy with this team in terms of what you're going to get on any given day. And in fact, the next game's at home actually is really bad for Dallas. It's really good for Philly coming in there because they just cannot replicate their mentality at home, which is one of the strangest things we've ever said about a team, is to have that kind of state of affairs. Because usually you would say a team with a really good road record, even a 500 road record, oh man, that's going to be one of the best teams in the league. Nope, because they are terrible at home.
Yeah, it is interesting because I feel like Philly kind of along those lines last year as Philly kind of struggled, fell outside the playoffs. It was kind of that thing of Subaru Park had always been a hard place to play for other teams, and we couldn't seem to make it that way last year. And teams would come in and roll over us at home, and then we'd be competitive on the road. But that's not going to get you. That's not going to necessarily get you the results that you want coming down to the end of the season. Before we go too negative with it, what do you like about FC Dallas, or what do you like about the way they're playing? You talked about the identity that they're finding, maybe not being the formation the coach wants to play, but what do you like
Yeah.
about the team so far?
Well, the spirit that they show on the road, there's been multiple times this year where they've gone down a couple of goals and come back. It happened again just tonight, as right before we recorded this. They came back. They were down 2 goals against FC Cincinnati, came back and tied it, went down again, came back and tied it again. They came from behind to beat Inter Miami a little while back at the start of the Inter Miami sort of flame out they're currently going through. But there's been multiple occasions now where this team has rallied and got itself back in games. And just overall, really, their record on when most teams in MLS, when you score first or don't score first, that's really massively lopsided. You see these incredible stats. Like I think Dallas, when they score first, has won like 25 straight games or something. That's the way most teams are when you score first. Well, this Dallas team, when they don't score first, is actually around 500 this year, which is, again, it's a small sample size, but you're still really impressive to have that mentality. But on the other hand, the thing that's not impressive is that they're bleeding goals at a pretty massive rate, and they're making these mistakes defensively, and they have to play with a really rigid defensive structure and protect the back line if they're going to keep from bleeding crazy amounts of goals. So they're having a real battle internally in terms of how you want to play when you have Lucia Costa and Petter Moose up top, and yet you're giving up all these goals. It's a frustrating experience for the coach, I'm sure, and it probably is for the players as well.
Yeah, that is like the hard thing. It's like the balance of scoring versus defending, and what do you do with that? And if you defend more, then you don't score as much. And if you give up that one goal, then all of a sudden you've got to fight to get it. And yeah, it's a hard balance to swallow. What's been the team's kind of weakness or Achilles heel, or the thing that you're like, ah man, I wish that would change other than just the rough results at home.
Yeah, well, the inconsistency. Last, I'll give you an example. Last game in Seattle, they had 0 crosses from open play, not one, and really created almost nothing. And they lost 1-0. They were in the game till the end, and then Seattle won on a PK. Well, this game against Cincinnati tonight, all of a sudden they decided they were going to use the width, and they had 20 crosses from open play, and they ended up scoring 3 goals. So it's those kinds of inconsistencies that are happening, like in all phases of play. They're a little light in the midfield because Paxton Pomykal is still out and Sebastian Lletget are still out. So they're using like a bunch of holding mids all at the same time. So there's not a lot of ability to play progression through the middle and line break. And so they're a little bit one dimensional at times, having to play over the top and play long more than they probably would like to. They would like to be a mix of the two things. The defense is not particularly good at playing out of the back also, which doesn't help when you're trying to play out of the back and all you got in front of you is a bunch of holding mids. So that ability to play a multifaceted game is missing. So they often become really simple to defend and really simple to figure out because they can only offer sometimes just one variety of offense. It's a new coach under a team in the first year of a rebuild. They just gutted out a lot of cap last year and then had Lucio Costa fall in their lap without really a plan for how that was going to work in terms of the rebuild. So they got a lot of probably turning over this roster to go over the next couple of years, under this new coach, if he makes it that far, because right now they're not even getting the results to fight for the bottom of the playoffs.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, Lucho Acosta is probably familiar to most Union fans, having played in Cincinnati for a long time
Mm-hmm.
and had a lot of those matchups. But who else would you say, like, man, as a even as a neutral fan, or who's exciting to watch for Dallas?
Well, they got really lucky on a center back. They needed probably 2 center backs, so they went out and got one, and he wasn't even their first choice. But they got this guy named Osaze Iragide from the French Second Division. He's been an absolutely phenomenal find, just a tremendous defender in all phases of the game. A real surprise to all of us. We saw a little bit of tape on him. We're like, well, French Division 2, what do we know? Well, no, he's great. Unfortunately, he left the game after like 20 minutes against Cincinnati with either a tightness or perhaps a dead leg, hammy, or something. They had to take him out of the game. So he may not be available this weekend, which is a shame because that's a player that's fun to watch because of how good he is defensively. And then really other than that, you guys all would know Lucho Costa, but Petr Musa, the big striker, the Czech striker they have, is a pretty good player. He's very demonstrative in a negative way, but he doesn't, only for a second or two, and then he recovers. He's like, okay, no, I'm back in, and he fights and he works hard. Um, Really, those two guys, other than Lucio Costa, are the ones right now that are like really exciting. They have so many pieces that are missing or hurt that it's really hard to get excited about it. Paxton Pomykal when he hasn't played in like 2 years now. People will know the name Shaq Moore from the national team probably at right back, but his season has been kind of just average, really. So, when you have a team that's down there sitting on 17 points in 11th place, there's not really a whole lot of great going on to look at and think, oh, that'll be fun. More than likely there'll be a holding mid in the midfield who's 19 years old from Brazil that they paid $4 million for. And if you like your holding mids, you can watch his game and you can see some raw pieces in his game that are very interesting, really rangy, really aggressive, knows how to tackle. That doesn't mean he knows how to play at a high level yet. So if you're into the development of that kind of player, that's a fun player to watch because he's very, very talented, but very, very young.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Um, any predictions for how you feel like this game's gonna go this weekend?
Well, the only prediction that I would have would be that I think Philadelphia Union is a very good team and FC Dallas is not. So Dallas will have their hands full, I think, trying to be in this game. I mean, Philly's offense is pretty good, and their defense is pretty good. So, like, they're pretty good, really, in all phases. And Dallas is a team that really is not good in all phases. So, I think there'll probably be an emphasis from the Dallas perspective. I hope that they'll go with of the couple of shapes they use. One of them is, I call it a diamond, a narrow diamond, but really it's kind of a 4-3 with like 3 holding mids, if you will, in front of the defense. When they play that shape, they're able to control the game and control the pace of the game and limit the opportunities of the other team. And I think if they're going to get a result against Philly, they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to keep the game tight and give themselves a chance late, particularly because they're not as good at home as they are on the road. So That's my expectation. I don't think Dallas would want to try and go against Philly and try and open it up, and go end to end with them. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. So, when a team is searching for an identity and searching for a way to win games, you almost never know what you're going to get. But my anticipation is that they'll try and keep the game tight and control the pace of the play.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I if it's any consolation to you or any hope to you, I feel like this is I think the Union's ninth game in the month of May. And
Yeah,
so we've had a midweek game every week with the Open Cup and all that kind of stuff. Got taken to
yeah, Dallas too. Yeah.
120 minutes against Indy, and so it's just it's like it's been a long month already. And so I think there's a chance I think there's a chance that Philly's getting tired. And I think we saw that a little bit tonight. It was a little bit lackadaisical, and then they kind of won the game on a corner kick, and then a huge deflection that got behind Sean Johnson. And so it was not the I would not call the performance the best performance we've seen. It was gritty, and they happened to pull it out, but I don't think it was all that deserved. So it'll be interesting to see how they come out this weekend. I don't know that they'll come out flat, but it'll when you've played 9 games in a month, it'll be interesting to see
Well, both
what
of these
happens.
teams are relatively low in possession. FC Dallas only had like 37% against Cincinnati, so neither one of them really won the ball. So you might be looking at two teams that'll be like, no, you have it. No, you have it. Especially because it might be a little warm this weekend. We'll see. It got up over 90 a couple of times recently, so you never know in Texas when
Yeah,
you're going to get us. It rained a lot yesterday, so it was like 70 degrees, and then 2 days later it'll be 100. So we'll see what kind of weather we get on Saturday. I haven't looked at the forecast yet,
yeah,
but it could be hot.
for sure, for sure. It'll be better than what it's going to be in Philly. It's going to be raining all weekend in Philly, so hopefully it'll be better than that. Yeah, so I always like asking, questions that are just interesting to me. I think one of the things that's interesting to me as I look around, kind of, Philly's well positioned, like in a big city, all that kind of stuff. And you look at the New Yorks, you look at the LAs, you look at, even Dallas now, and I'll get there in a second. But you see a a competitive soccer market, that there's multiple teams at multiple levels in the U.S. soccer, landscape and all that kind of stuff. In New York and L.A., you have the two big teams. Chicago, you have a couple teams there, all that kind of stuff. But Philly doesn't have that. We don't even have a women's team at the highest level, and all of that kind of stuff. And so, just wondered your thoughts. Obviously, Dallas Trinity playing at the USL Super League. You've got Atletico Dallas just announced for a couple seasons in the USL Championship. You got FC Dallas. Um, I think it's just interesting to see kind of the difference. How do you feel like that impacts kind of just the soccer landscape in Dallas with those teams, and even what do you feel like is happening with Atletico Dallas and kind of their push as they move forward for USL play?
Well, you only got the tip of the iceberg there. This is the number 3 media market in the United States, and the growth patterns are showing that it'll grow even more over the next, however many years. It's probably not a long way from catching New York or LA, but it's heading towards passing Chicago. Sorry, it's number 4 media market. It's on its way to passing Chicago for number 3. And we're on the way to having like 9 teams here. So you already have FC Dallas, and you have their next pro team, North Texas SC, which plays in one of the other suburbs in Arlington. Dallas Trinity is a USL Super League team, plays at the Cotton Bowl. Atletico Dallas is going to start USL Championship, but might be the end of the new USL Division One team. That's going to be in Dallas and or Garland. There's a USL Championship team coming to Fort Worth, too. And we have a USL One team in Texoma, which is just northeast of Dallas by about 30 miles. Plus, we have 2 professional indoor teams, and we have about 7 teams that play at the NPSL USL2 League for Clubs level. So, and we're getting a women's Division 2 team, the WPSL2 that's coming in. It's like a higher level in between. We're getting one of those teams also. So the thing about Dallas is it's a massive, massive market. And soccer, in my opinion, despite the fact that MLS and the game is national, even international, if you consider the way Apple TV gets looked around the world, a lot of fandom for MLS teams is still local. it's kind of like hockey that way, where like the towns that have a team are into it, but not like you don't have teams like the Cowboys or the Eagles that are watched all over the United States. You know, and as you said, the fans of the Union know the Union, right? So like teams in soccer really are looking at these 30-mile radius markets, and like people joke about Dallas being in Frisco being like, oh, FC Dallas is not even in Dallas. You know, it's like 30 miles away. Well, there's like 2.5 million people in the 30-mile radius of Frisco, where FC Dallas is, which is more than there are for the San Jose Earthquakes, you know, which is south of San Francisco in their 30-mile radius. So everything is relative. Like the Atletico Dallas is coming into the Dallas Garland East Dallas area. That's the area that used to feed off the Cotton Bowl that had 15 to 17,000 people crowds at the Cotton Bowl back in the first 2 years of MLS. So there are absolutely millions of people in their area that is a completely different area than the area that FC Dallas works up there in North Dallas. So if you're going to get a USL team over in Fort Worth, that's a whole nother town of a million people that just passed San Antonio to be the third biggest city in the Texas. So there are just absolutely tons of people here, and there's tons of people that need entertainment and tons of people to follow these soccer teams. So if any town can support that many teams, it could be Dallas. I think that's might be too much. Maybe in the end of the day, that might be too many teams. So we might see some of them not quite make it. But I know that Atletico Dallas guys, they're really smart financial guys. One of them's owners and more expertise is in business finance. The other one came up through, ticket sales, marketing, business. So they're pretty salty and savvy about the business side, and the decisions they've been making, to my opinion, of having been in this market now covering soccer for 30 years, I think are really smart. You know, they have a guy who's a soccer guy who's a former U17 national team player. Really, his son is a really good player. He knows everybody in the game. You know, he's got good buddies all up through Major League Soccer, so they have a good footing on the soccer side. So they're making a really lot of smart decisions, and they're not looking to make enemies out of anybody. You know, they think, just like the Hunts think, that the World Cup's going to change the landscape again, that they're going to see this massive growth in soccer, and that everyone's going to benefit. So that there's no one's going to war over it here. It's not like those teams are taking shots at each other. It's all right now. It's all goodwill, and there's plenty big enough market, for all these teams to coexist here.
Yeah, to your point, I think it is interesting thinking about how many people are just located in the Dallas area.
Yeah.
And then you add Fort Worth on top of that, and what that area of the country can support. I think that is, a fair point. I just think it's interesting is, having, I had the opportunity in February to go to England and was there, and I was in London on a random Sunday, and it was like you could just look up, and there was 4 or 5 games that I could have gone to, that I ended up, picking one and going to. But I think it is interesting that, like, for Philadelphia, if you miss the Union, that's the only chance you had to see soccer that weekend. You of course could go to the MLS Next Pro team, but like if you miss the Union, that's or can't go to the Union, that's your chance. You kind of miss soccer, and so I think it is interesting with one, you have the regions of the city that can support a team in and of themselves. But then also it's just nice that, like, hey, if Dallas is away on the weekend, you want to go catch another soccer game, you got 4 other teams, potentially within not a far drive that you can go see. And that doesn't hurt the growth of the game. Now, whether that you can support all those teams is another conversation, but that doesn't hurt the growth of the game, knowing that, hey, there's always a game happening in town on any given weekend.
Yeah, the Fort Worth is a good 45 minutes from Dallas, where Atletico Dallas will be, and FC Dallas is 35 to 40 minutes north of Dallas, and it's an hour probably from FC Dallas over to Fort Worth. So these teams are spread out. I mean, there's 8 million people in
Yeah.
this market. 36 million I think it is now in Texas, and this is one of the fastest growing states in the United States. And Dallas and the Metroplex, not Dallas itself, but the suburbs around it, are always in the fastest growing lists of population. So there are just absolutely tons of people here, and soccer as a game is growing in terms of its attention. It's climbing the ranks, and then there's plenty of people around any one of these teams here that exceed like the top 10 in any other league in terms of the now people around those cities. like Fort Worth by itself is big enough for a USL championship team, easy. With it
Hmm.
being over 1 million people just in the city of Fort Worth, and then you add in all the city of Fort Worth suburbs. Now you're talking about 1.5, 2 million people over there for one USL championship team to pull from. I mean, that was one of the biggest. That'd be one of the biggest team markets in the USL Championship if that team when that team finally happens. Excuse me. And Dallas is the same thing. Like Dallas is proper, is the other 6 million people, however, in the Dallas area. That's a lot of people for a USL Championship team to draw from. And both those teams, I think, probably, I don't know this officially, but probably have ambition to be in the USL Premier level. And the league's going to pay attention to a market this size and those teams. There's
Yeah, that's
possibilities for
yeah,
sure.
super exciting for that. Well, thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for jumping on, giving us some thoughts on Dallas and FC Dallas and the game this weekend. Where can people find you, your podcasts, the things you do on the internet? People want to follow up or find out more.
Sure. Thirddegree.net is our website, which I started in October of 1997. We're on our 28th season covering FC Dallas. The podcast is called Third Degree the Podcast. We're in season 7 of that podcast. And then you can find us on all the social medias under that same banner, Third Degree Net, or my name, but more likely under that banner of Third Degree. And we cover all the teams in DFW, not just FC Dallas. So we cover soccer broadly here from the academy all the way up through the pro level.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, thanks for joining me. You can find us anywhere you find us on the internet at VFTB Pod. And you can listen to us, let us know what you think about the game this weekend. And we'll probably be back with our next episode, probably after the FC Dallas game. And we'll kind of review all the games. And but thanks for your thoughts. Thanks for giving us input and all that kind of stuff. And we'll give you more Union content very, very soon.